There are moments in life when we carry something sacred, something so pure that it doesn't come from us, but through us. A word of peace, a spirit of kindness, a heart filled with mercy. These things are not earned by our works or inherited through our bloodline. They are heaven's gifts, placed delicately within us to shine light into a dark world. But what happens when that light is mocked? When the gift is trampled? When heaven sends goodness clothed in a human soul, and that soul is betrayed, discarded, or treated with contempt? You see, betrayal is not merely the turning of one back against another. It is the dismissal of something holy. When a person walks away from someone who loved purely, supported unconditionally, and forgave endlessly, they are not just betraying a person, they are rejecting heaven's offering, and heaven takes that seriously. You may not have seen thunder crash the moment they hurt you. You may not have witnessed any immediate punishment or consequences. In fact, you might have questioned whether God saw it at all, but rest assured, heaven has eyes that never blink, ears that never miss, and justice that never sleeps. When someone betrays a pure soul sent by heaven, they aren't just losing a person, they are severing their connection to divine favor. It's as if they shut the door on a banquet prepared by God himself, and now they stand outside, knocking on every door they can find, only to discover that every door is sealed shut. Why? Because heaven does not reward those who spit on its gifts. The hands that crushed what was holy will find that everything they now touch crumbles. Every opportunity becomes a mirage. Every relationship ends in loneliness. Every blessing they pursue remains just out of reach. Heaven is not cruel, but it is just. It withholds not out of hatred, but out of divine principle. You cannot harm what God sends and expect God to bless what you build. You cannot wound the vessel of his grace and then ask him to pour that same grace into your life. So if you've ever felt like your love was rejected, your kindness discarded, or your prayers mocked, know this: you were not weak. You were sacred. And those who walked away from you didn't just lose you. They forfeited access to what heaven had planned for them through you. Now, while they wander from door to door, looking for comfort, status, healing, or success, each door remains shut, and behind each door is the echo of their own betrayal. Let them knock, let them shout, let them beg. Heaven is silent toward those who silence the ones it sent. But you, yes, you who were betrayed, heaven is not done with you. It is rebuilding you in secret, strengthening you, preparing you, because heaven always restores what hell tried to ruin. And one day, while they're knocking on closed doors, you'll walk through one that swings open effortlessly, not because you earned it by revenge, but because heaven honors those who carry what is holy, even when it hurts. Some people walk into your life not by coincidence, but by divine orchestration. They are not merely friends, partners, or companions. They are answers sent from heaven to stand beside you, to lift you, to correct your course, to teach you love, to sharpen your spirit. They arrive at precise moments, not earlier or later, because their timing is stitched into the design of your destiny. And when they come bearing more than presence. They come bearing purpose. Yet in a world that has forgotten how to recognize what is sacred, these divine answers are often dismissed. Why? Because they don't always arrive in grandeur. They may come clothed in simplicity, humility, gentleness. They might come with hands that offer instead of take, with eyes that see your pain instead of your performance, and with a heart that sacrifices without demand. But those who live in noise cannot recognize the quiet language of heaven, so they reject the very thing they were praying for. Think about it. How many people cry out for peace and push away the one who brought calm? How many ask for love and run from those who love them most truly? How many beg for healing but destroy the healer sent to them? This is not uncommon. It is the tragedy of humanity. People are often blind to heaven's answers because they are expecting something wrapped in glitter, not something wrapped in grace. Heaven knows exactly what a soul needs, even before that soul knows how to ask. And when it responds, it sends more than just help. It sends a person, a relationship, a voice that carries divine authority, even if the world calls it ordinary. But when that gift is met with betrayal, when it is mocked, belittled, or used and discarded, heaven takes note. It is no small thing to wound the one God sent as an answer, because in doing so they are not just rejecting a person, they are rejecting heaven's involvement in their story. It's as if they stood at the edge of breakthrough, stared at the doorway God had opened, and instead of walking through it, they slammed it shut and walked away. And here lies the mystery. They think they walked away from just another person, but in truth, they walked away from their miracle. You were not random. You were the response. You were the one who listened, prayed, forgave, poured out, because that's what heaven equipped you to do. You may have doubted your worth after they betrayed you. You may have questioned if you were enough, but the reality is, they did not betray weakness. They betrayed wonder. They did not reject someone broken. They rejected someone chosen. And now every cry from their lips echoes in silence, not because God is cruel, but because heaven waits for them to realize what they once had. Until then, every attempt they make to replace you fails. Every connection feels shallow. Every door they knock on seems closed. And it is. Because heaven doesn't reward those who treat its answers like mistakes. There is something sacred about purity, not the kind that wears a label or shouts its virtues for all to see, but the kind that is hidden deep within a soul, the kind that serves without strings, loves without masks, believes without proof. That kind of purity is rare, not because it is impossible, but because it costs everything. It is forged in pain, protected by prayer, and sustained by God alone. So when someone crosses paths with a soul like this and betrays it, they are not just breaking a heart, they are committing spiritual treason. You see, heaven watches closely over those who carry its fragrance. People with pure hearts are vessels of God's grace on earth. They may not be perfect, but their spirit is aligned with divine truth. They operate not from selfish ambition, but from sacred intention. And because of that, heaven invests in them, walks with them, shields them, even when the world tramples on them. You see, the world never stops, even when the world tramples on them. When someone uses, lies to, mocks or discards a pure soul, they may feel justified in the moment. They may even feel powerful. But what they cannot see is the spiritual court convening above their heads. Because betraying purity isn't just immoral, it's dangerous. There is a deep divine law that governs this universe. What you sow, you shall reap. And when the seed you sow is betrayal against the innocent, the harvest is not just sorrow, it is spiritual exile. It is as if they removed themselves from the circle of divine favor and now wander in spiritual wilderness, unaware that the silence they hear is not chance, it is judgment. Heaven responds to betrayal with closed doors, not out of vengeance, but out of preservation. Because those who are careless with purity are not ready to handle God's blessings. And so the doors of abundance, of peace, of divine relationships and spiritual revelation begin to shut one by one, not because the doors don't exist, but because the betrayer no longer holds the key. Every time they attempt to recreate what they destroyed, it fails. Every time they try to connect, it collapses. Every time they chase something new, It slips through their fingers. Why? Because the soul that wounds a pure vessel finds itself locked out of heaven's flow. It is not about human punishment, it is spiritual consequence. They touched what was holy with dirty hands, and now heaven hides its treasures from them. It is a slow unraveling. The world may not see it, but the spirit feels it. They lose peace, then clarity, then connection, and finally themselves. And as they wander, looking for a door that will open like the one they once had, they come to realize that no amount of knocking will force heaven to respond to hands that were once used to destroy its gift. Heaven is merciful, but it is also wise, and when it witnesses betrayal against one of its own, it rewrites access. The betrayer will not find their way again until they first confront the damage they caused to the one who was pure and sent. There are things in this world that carry the fingerprints of God, people, moments, and even relationships anointed for divine purposes. When God blesses someone, He places a mark upon them that is not visible to the naked eye, but undeniable to the discerning soul. His favor isn't always loud or flashy. Sometimes it dwells quietly within the heart of the one who prays in secret, forgives endlessly, and gives without ever keeping count. To curse what God has blessed is to wage war against heaven itself, and many do this unknowingly. They ridicule the gentle one. They speak evil of the kind-hearted. They abandon those who stood beside them at their lowest. In their pride, they raise their words like weapons, tearing down what was sent to uplift them. But they do not realize they are not just wounding flesh and bone. They are cursing the presence of God wrapped in a person's life. This is no small offense in the eyes of heaven. When God chooses someone to be a vessel of comfort, healing, or restoration in another's life, it is a sacred appointment. To treat that person with cruelty, with betrayal, with disdain, is to spit on the altar of divine mercy. And though heaven is rich in compassion, it is also rooted in justice. God will not bless the hands that destroy what He built. He will not honor the lips that speak ruin over the lives He has raised. He will not pour into hearts that tear others apart. They may appear successful for a time. They may boast, flourish, and even attract new relationships or ventures, but deep within, something begins to die. That unexplainable emptiness, the restlessness, the inability to find meaning in anything they chase. It all points to the same source. They cursed what God had once blessed for them, and that blessing is now gone, the very favor they once touched. The peace that radiated through you, the safety they felt in your presence, the clarity they gained by simply being around your spirit, all of it was God's hand working through you. And instead of embracing it, they rejected it. Instead of protecting it, they poisoned it. They misjudged something holy, and now they are starving for the blessings they once held with contempt. They try to recreate it. They chase similar people. They mimic familiar conversations. They rehearse what used to work. But it fails. Again and again it fails. Because no blessing can grow in soil poisoned by betrayal. No future can flourish when the foundation was scorched by ungratefulness. And no hand can receive from God while it still carries the remnants of destruction. They mocked what God ordained, and now they live with doors shut, not because heaven is cruel, but because heaven is consistent. What God blesses, He guards, and those who curse His work will not be welcomed back into His abundance until they kneel before the truth of what they've done. Every soul is given moments, sacred moments, when heaven whispers an invitation. Sometimes it's an idea, a chance, a divine prompting. But often it comes through people, a friend who offers wisdom, a mentor who believes in you, a partner who loves with uncommon grace. These are heaven's gifts, opportunities dressed in human form. But when the heart becomes hardened, proud, or blind to what is divine, those opportunities are not just missed, they are lost permanently. The heart is a gate, and God does not force himself through locked gates. He knocks, he nudges, he stirs. But when a person refuses to recognize or respond to heaven's presence, the doors around them begin to shut, not as punishment, but as a reflection of their own choices. They rejected the very thing that would have transformed them. When someone closes their heart to a person sent by heaven, when they choose pride over humility, ego over love, suspicion over trust, they are rejecting more than a relationship. They are rejecting the process through which God would have shaped their future. And so, the doors begin to close. Opportunities they once took for granted begin to disappear. Conversations that used to give life now feel shallow. People who once pursued them now pull away. The invitations dry up, the favor fades. Why? Because heaven never keeps its gifts where they are not welcomed. The tragedy is not just that they lost you. It's that they lost what heaven would have done through you. You were the door they didn't recognize, the gate they didn't honor, the answer they prayed for and walked away from. And now, every other door looks appealing, but won't open, because no door opens when the heart is still shut to what came before. God offers gifts, not guarantees. And when someone turns their back on a heaven-sent blessing, they cannot expect the same heaven to flood their life with more. And that's not divine cruelty, it's spiritual accountability. The refusal to receive from heaven results in heaven's refusal to pour again. So they knock and knock on new jobs, new friendships, new dreams, but none of them last. Because the doors of opportunity are not opened by effort, they are opened by posture. And a heart closed to grace cannot unlock the future it once held in its hands. Only God can open doors no man can shut. But God will not open doors for those who shut him out when he came through someone else. There comes a time when even the most desperate prayers feel as though they vanish into the sky. A time when the words spoken in trembling faith meet only silence. For the one who betrayed what was holy, this is the silence they now know too well. It is not the silence of abandonment, but the silence of heaven withholding response, because heaven waits for repentance before it releases restoration. You see, betrayal does not go unnoticed in the courts of the divine. And when that betrayal is not followed by humility, confession, or repentance, it becomes a barrier, not one built by God, but one built by the very hands of the betrayer. They cut off the flow of favor with their own actions. They slam the door shut with their own choices, and now they kneel and cry, they call and beg, but heaven remains quiet, not because it doesn't care, but because heaven listens to the condition of the heart more than the volume of the voice. Those who betrayed you, who cursed the presence of God in your life, now seek answers. They seek peace, they seek guidance, but they forget. God is not mocked. He does not forget what they tried to bury in denial. They can pretend they were right, they can rewrite history to protect their pride. But heaven deals in truth, not narratives, and until they face what they did, fully, honestly, brokenly, every prayer they offer will echo back to them unanswered. God requires truth in the inward parts, and truth always leads us to confront the people we've harmed, to acknowledge what we tried to ignore, to return to the place we left undone. That's why their life feels like a loop, why progress seems impossible, why peace seems counterfeit, because they are still running from the one thing that would unlock it all: humility before the one they wronged. They may have moved on in appearance, but their spirit is stuck in the moment they betrayed something holy. Even if they try to start over, nothing flourishes. Even if they change environments, the drought follows them, because their prayers are missing the one ingredient heaven demands: repentance. Not just the regret of being caught, but the sorrow of knowing they harmed someone heaven loved. And this is the mystery. They think they need a new opportunity, a second chance, a fresh start. But what they truly need is to go back, to return in spirit to the scene of their betrayal. Not to you physically, perhaps, but to the truth of what they did. To say in the silence of their soul, "I was wrong. I harmed someone God sent, and I have carried pride where I should have carried sorrow. Sorrow." Only then will the echo begin to fade. Only then will the silence be broken. Because God responds to the broken-hearted, not just the broken by life, but the broken by truth. And until that happens, their prayers will rise like smoke with no fire to ignite them. Words without repentance are just noise, and heaven doesn't speak over noise. There are people in this world who are not just walking through life. They are carrying something sacred. You were one of them. You may not have seen yourself that way. Perhaps you still don't. But heaven did, and heaven still does. You were not merely kind, you were an instrument of mercy. You weren't just loving, you were a channel of divine healing. What they received from you wasn't ordinary affection. It was the overflow of something holy that lived inside your spirit, and they mishandled it. But heaven does not abandon its vassals. It does not leave those it anointed in the ruins of another's betrayal. It watches, it waits, and when the betrayal is done, when the lies are told, the departure made, and the mockery complete, heaven responds, not just with comfort for you, but with consequences for them. Because when someone harms a vessel of heaven, they invite God's intervention, not just in your protection, but in their correction. The role of a vessel is not glamorous. Often it is invisible. You pour out until you're empty. You forgive until it hurts. You love when it's not returned. You stand when others would fall. But because you were faithful, even in the pain, God now wraps his hand around you like a shield, not just to protect you from what's next, but to honor what you carried before. And those who wounded you, they didn't wound just you. They struck the vessel. They struck the assignment. They broke what was meant to bless them. And now the weight of that decision falls not on your shoulders, but on theirs. Heaven does not take lightly the mistreatment of its servants, not the ones on platforms, but the ones in private. The quiet souls who prayed when no one knew, who loved when it wasn't deserved, who stayed pure when bitterness beckoned. These are the vassals heaven holds most dear. These are the ones God defends with fire. So while they walk away thinking they won, thinking they freed themselves from you, they don't realize they didn't just walk away from a person. They walked away from protection, from favor, from alignment. They left the vessel that held their answer, and now they find themselves thirsty, desperate, and empty. And as for you, heaven is pouring back into you, slowly, gently, silently, not because you begged, but because you were faithful. You didn't curse when you could have. You didn't expose when you had the chance. You didn't return evil for evil. And heaven never forgets a vessel that stayed clean in the storm. That's why your restoration is different. It's not loud. It's not immediate. But it's coming, because heaven protects what carries its presence. And you, dear soul, are still carrying more than they ever understood. There is a sacred beauty in the way heaven operates. It does not need an audience to do its greatest work. When others ruined you in full view, when they spoke against you in rooms where you had no voice, when they turned your name into a weapon and your pain into gossip, they believed the damage was done. They believed that because they broke you publicly, your worth had been permanently erased. But what they forgot is this: heaven doesn't restore where people can see first. It restores where only you and God can feel. God does his finest miracles in hidden places. While they parade in the light, pretending they're untouched by their betrayal, you've been in the shadows, bleeding, grieving, surviving. They have mistaken your silence for defeat, but what they cannot see is the holy work being done in secret, behind closed doors, in quiet nights, in weeping prayers, in long walks where you whispered, "God, I don't understand," and God answered. Not always in thunder, sometimes in the stillness of your soul, where he began to mend what they shattered, piece by piece, layer by layer, not just restoring who you were, but rebuilding who you were always meant to become. This is heaven's way. God does not respond to public humiliation with public retaliation. He responds with divine elevation, but not immediately. He lets the roots grow deep before the bloom is visible. He lets the healing become complete before the vindication becomes obvious. Because heaven is not concerned with impressing your enemies, it is concerned with preparing your victory. What they ruined to weaken you, God allowed to strengthen you. And while they search door after door for peace, for stability, for someone to replace you, they keep coming up empty, because the door they need isn't in front of them. It's behind them. It's the one they slammed shut when they betrayed the one heaven had sent. And now, while they look for shortcuts to restoration, you are becoming the very thing they will one day recognize too late. Heaven is rewriting your story, not as a rebuttal to their betrayal, but as a reward for your endurance. Your silent obedience has not gone unnoticed. Your refusal to retaliate, your decision to trust God instead of seeking revenge, that has built a foundation heaven now honors. They ruined your name, but heaven is giving you a new one that is not defined by your past, but by your calling, one that is no longer attached to their betrayal, but to your breakthrough. And when you rise, and you will, it will be clear to all who tried to ruin you that heaven saw, heaven heard, and heaven answered. So now let it settle into your soul. They didn't just walk away from a person, they walked away from purpose. They betrayed what heaven sent, and heaven has shut every door they now knock on, not because God is vengeful, but because he is holy. Because what is sacred must be protected, and what is pure must be avenged, not with wrath, but with justice. Let them knock, let them search. Let them wonder why nothing works the way it used to. While they knock on door after door, heaven is opening one for you. A door they will never find again, a place they cannot enter, a peace they forfeited. You, beloved, were the gift. You were the answer wrapped in flesh. You carried heaven quietly, and they mistook your gentleness for weakness. But God knew. God saw. And heaven never forgets the ones it sends. So walk forward, not with bitterness, but with quiet authority. Heaven fights for you. Heaven restores you. Heaven elevates you. And heaven always, always defends what it sends.